Good evening, everyone. I hope you had beautiful days where you were. As Benny said already, it's a little bit colder, but still hopefully beautiful. The cold has a different type of a beauty, right? Especially as you go into the next year in January, I feel like it's a serenity within the beauty, a quietness and uh, depth that you don't necessarily see, feel, or come across as easily in the spring, summer, and maybe a little more in the fall. But still, it's so lively and colorful, activity, and you find some really calm moments in the winter. So beauty everywhere. Tonight, we will jump back into Leaves, Roots, and Fruit by Nicole Burke of Gardenery. And we also have our little set of articles, and I didn't even think to get them all pulled up. I'll have to get used to having that all ready for us. So let me just figure out. I'm thinking it's this one here, and it is. Okay, so that makes it easy. It's our last set of tabs. Okay, so I believe I removed, yes. So we're moving on to our next article, and that will be how much does it cost to grow microgreens at home, right? So our last week's article, the only supplies you really need to grow microgreens at home. And this week, how much does it cost to grow microgreens at home? A little bit similar, little bit of variance there. I think it's just a good topic to keep brushing on, as it's something that we can start right now. And I really would have loved to this weekend. I don't think that that's going to happen. Perhaps over this week, though. My parents will be up here next weekend for our youngest daughter's birthday. And then the following weekend is Thanksgiving. And I'd really like to get these microgreens started. So I need to get my lights out. I need to get the whole thing kind of figured out how I'm going to go about doing it. I don't want to probably do my whole little miniature tent, right? The tent that Tammy probably talked to you guys about earlier today in her house is probably 15 sizes larger than my little mini tent that I have to go upstairs, where we were trying to get it in the sunlight. But as we went through an entire year here, our front room doesn't get a lot of direct sunlight. The only room in this whole house that really gets a lot of direct sunlight is our oldest daughter's bedroom. And so once again, the Utah lack of light problem has completed the entire trajectory. We've gone through more than one valley. We've had every kind of placement for the windows. We've had every kind of domicile, and yet in each one there is this very, very limited amount of sunlight that comes into the home. Very strange. So you have to adapt with what is, though. So the little miniature tent can come down here into the office, where I can be a lot more attentive to it if we do need to go to that stage. I would still rather go something a little smaller that just goes up here over on like the TV stand or something like that, where I can easily set up the lights for it. However, that whole shelving unit was designed for hosting seedlings and things. So the lights are really close, and that's what you really need when you're doing things like these microgreens, when you're starting seedlings, all of that type of setup, right? So we'll have to see as our second year begins fully, right? We got it here in September, but we were really moving in middle October, November, we were fully in the house. So now starting off that full second year, we'll see how much we can adapt the house to making it convenient. All right. How much does it cost to grow microgreens at home? And the only reason I'm talking about that is I really would like to bring you guys along for the process, just to see how absolutely easy it is, right? So hopefully this week we'll get that filmed, get that up, and then you guys can watch that over this next week, and we can talk about it when we get back together here or in any of our classes. Just go and take a quick peek to see if that's something that you want to do. Of course, Candace has already done sprouts, right? This is microgreens, a little different than sprouts, but a very comparable stage of life, I'll say, right? Microgreens at the store are expensive. Last summer, I was working on pictures for my second book project when I realized with horror that I'd forgotten to start microgreen seeds the week before. I had an entire chapter on microgreens to fill with photos. I had a photographer ready to go, but I had nothing for him to capture. Panicked, I ran to the nearest farmer's market, desperately searching for someone selling microgreens. I managed to find a couple of small trays being sold for $10 each. You'll find that the microgreens price is regularly $5, $8, even $10 at farmers markets and grocery stores. You probably won't buy a pound of microgreens at once, but if you did, it would set you back between $25 and $50. To compare, a pound of spinach typically costs about $6. Microgreens may be tinier than normal produce, but their price tag is not. I had no choice but to pull out my wallet and pay the piper $30 for 3 trays, all while chiding myself for not growing my own. I could have easily produced my own trays of microgreens under grow lights in my basement in just 5 or 6 days and for a fraction of the cost. I can tell you with good authority that growing your own microgreens will cost you way less than buying them at the store. Let's take a look at how much it will actually cost to grow your own. How to grow microgreens on a budget. If it's your first time growing microgreens or you're sticking to a tight budget, you can keep it simple with a setup of seeds, soil, water, and a little bit of light. You can even use many materials you probably already have hanging out in a cabinet or junk drawer. For light, you can use the free energy source in the sky, the sun. Again, not every person has that option, right? Not indoors. Outdoors, sure, I can access the sun most days, at least a little, but not indoors. So you'll place your microgreens next to a bright window. It's best to grow microgreens indoors unless you have the perfect mild weather. And rotate the tray frequently, right? So you grow it next to a bright window and rotate the tray frequently. And I believe that most of you will have some sort of area that you might be able to do that in. Every other state I've ever lived in, I've had access to light in the homes that I was in, right? So it's a little bit odd. So I'm hoping that most of you have different options. All right. So just know that this method won't produce as consistent or reliable of results as an artificial light source. So it's free to use the sun, and you can definitely get value in your microgreens, but they won't have this constant sameness, the consistency of the microgreens grown under a 12-hour constant light source or whatever each microgreen requires, right? Microgreens want the light very close to them and tend to grow leggier when the light is further away. See? Repurpose these items that you probably already have in your home. 2 simple plastic containers. Find 2 old Tupperware type containers that are about 2 inches deep and stackable. You'll poke holes in the bottom of one and place it inside the other to hold the water that will drain from the holes you've made. A simple pitcher, watering can, or spray bottle. Keep your designated watering source filled with room temperature water. And remember, again, if you have a water softener like I do here, make sure to get a water source that doesn't have that salt in it, right? Popsicle sticks and a permanent marker. Make your own plant tags to remind you which type of seeds you planted where, especially if you're growing multiple varieties. You could alternatively label painter's tape and stick it to the side of the tray. A clean pair of kitchen scissors. You'll use scissors to harvest your baby greens. A small fan. If you're growing microgreens in a close space, place a small fan nearby to increase airflow and prevent rot, right? Okay. Spend your budget on these items. An organic seed starting mix. Don't skimp here. Prioritize organic so that there's nothing synthetic in the seed starting mix that will get into your microgreens and then into you. Rather than regular potting soil, you need seed starting mix because it's made for baby plants to push tender roots into. This is a bit of an investment because you should start over with fresh seed starting mix for each batch of microgreens. Your spent soil can go into your compost and be used later as nutrient-dense organic matter for your salad greens or vegetable garden. Seeds. There are many big companies that sell packets labeled to be grown as microgreens. These are the same seeds you would buy to grow into a full-size plant, but you'll need to purchase a large quantity of them since they won't be turning into full-size plants. You'll be really disappointed in the results if you buy a packet with only 15 seeds inside. She has some listed here, and of course I'll share this article in Collectively Rewilding. Experiment with different seeds for flavor, or look for packs with a variety mix of seeds. Prioritize seeds that are organic and non-GMO. Seeds can cost anywhere from about 60 cents to $8.50 per ounce, depending on the variety, the source, and whether you're buying in bulk. Your best option once you know your favorite varieties, that being bulk, right? And of course, she lets you know that some of this, the links in this article are Amazon affiliate links, right? And then you continue on. Total expenses. Here's a breakdown of potential expenses to grow microgreens on a budget. 2 old containers, free. Espoma organic seed starting mix, $17.12 for 2 8-quart bags. Solar light, free. Radish confetti organic microgreen mix from Johnny's Selected Seeds, $7.95 for 1 ounce. Total for your first trays of fresh organic microgreens, $25.07. That's about the same as it would cost to purchase 3 very small packs of microgreens at the farmer's market. You can grow about 2.5 full-size trays, about 22 inches by 11 inches, per ounce of seeds, so you could potentially be able to grow 1 tray each week for a month or so, depending on the size of your growing container. Your bags of seed starting mix will cover several trays once they've rehydrated with water. Again, exact numbers will depend on the size of your growing containers. How to improve your indoor gardening setup. Once you've fallen in love with microgreens and determined to grow them every week, it's worth it to invest in some supplies that you can reuse over and over again, and that will help you increase your yields. The recommended supplies include trays designed for microgreens, often called flats. Trays with holes and the reservoir to go underneath them are typically sold separately. Wash these trays with white vinegar and water between uses, and you'll be able to grow batch after nutritious batch in them. Each tray will cost about $5, or you can buy in sets of 5 if you're feeling ambitious. An artificial light source. The best lighting situation for your microgreens includes artificial lights that can be raised or lowered toward the trays. You can either hang a full spectrum light from a shelving unit or hooks, or clip wand lights on wire coils to the edge of your table or shelf for easy maneuverability over the growing trays. Mycorrhizae. Adding mycorrhizae to your organic seed starting mix is optional. The fungal hyphae inside mycorrhizae aid the growing plant's ability to obtain water and nutrients from the surrounding soil. These additional supplies will run you about $55, but the trays and lights can be used repeatedly, and a little bit of mycorrhizae goes a long way. Unless you're talking about using it outside, and then it goes very quickly, right? You could always look for Microgreens Growing Kit to simplify your shopping process. We've rounded up our favorite supplies and put it in one convenient kit for you. You can shop our Microgreens Magic Kit here. Even if you spend about $50 to $75 on your full microgreen setup and seeds, you'll still spend so much less money than you would buying tray after tray of microgreens at the grocery store, if you can even find them. We've been really lucky in Utah, and we do have access to those here, but they are, right? They're an expensive addition, and they're a very valuable addition to your diet. That living food, it's literally growing as you're eating it until you have begun that digestive process of chewing and swallowing and the whole process, right? I could use the technical words, but we're not really worried about mastication. So once we've begun that process, it's no longer living. Before that, you have a living food. It's different than eating the blueberry that's been separated from its stems and its leaves and its roots, and it's been separated for umpteen days, right? This is a thing that is growing as you're picking it up out of the tray and popping it into your mouth. Once you start chewing, you're killing it. It's living at that point, right? Kind of an interesting way to think about it, and yet it is living until you begin to eat that food. And that's why it has, I'm not sure if it's different sets of nutrients or if the way that the nutrients present themselves to your body, something about it, according to nutritionists, really increases the value of living foods when we're eating them, right? So if you can find them in the grocery store, they're going to run a lot. And the farmer's market, of course, will cost even more in a lot of cases. Plus, you'll when you do it at home, you'll be able to enjoy them fresh at their peak of flavor and nutrition and explore whichever and as many different varieties as you want. So pretty good idea, I think. Compare the cost of growing your own microgreens to the best vitamins money can buy. When you consume a microgreen, you get all the nutrition of the mature plant in one bite. Just a portion of one tray of mixed microgreens is like the most powerful daily vitamin you can take. It's pretty amazing when you think of how little setup and work is actually required to grow such incredibly nutritious food. Plus, you can grow microgreens just about anywhere and any time of year, and they're also the easiest way for us each to become a gardener. Once you've purchased your supplies, these tiny plants only require a couple of minutes of your attention each day. Happy gardening from my indoor kitchen to yours, right? And so these are her kits, and that gives you an example of what those the seed trays look like. All right, really interesting, and I do love the way that she thinks. We'll move on with another one of those articles next week. Let's go ahead and post that in our Gardenary space. And there, everybody will get a notification. Now, let's dive into leaves, roots, and fruit. Oh, hello, Miss Charity and Mr. Candes. Good to see you guys. And
hello.
Now, I will disappear into a book. All right, part 2, leaves. All right, so we began with the setup and growing with your plants, right? Let's just take a quick look at our chapters here so that we can see about where we're at with part 2, leaves. Part 1 is the leaves, roots, and fruit system overall. Grow with your plants and set up for success. Now, part 2, leaves, we're going to start with step 1, and it's interesting. She doesn't really designate it as clearly in the actual chapter, but it is detailed in the contents menu. So step 1 is sprouts, shoots, and microgreens, appropriately enough. Okay, unless you live in a desert, you probably walk by billions of the most magical things in the universe every day and don't even realize it. Leaves. Even as I write this, I can look out my window and see millions of blades of grass. Thousands of tiny leaves are waving in the wind on just one maple tree. And out in my kitchen garden, there are more leaves than I can count. Perhaps we take leaves for granted because they're so common. We don't appreciate how magical they are and that they're so good for us, for our gardens, and for the whole planet, because everywhere we turn, there they are. Not to worry. These first few steps will change all of that. By the time you finish this section, you will love leaves. You'll appreciate the supernatural event that occurs each time a plant forms this perfect little unit of life. And maybe, just maybe, you'll want to eat more leaves than you ever have before. Along with roots, leaves are the prerequisite for all other plant growth. Anything we want from a plant, even if it's not the leaves, must come through the leaves to start. So even if you're eventually growing plants for their roots or fruit or seeds, you won't have anything to eat unless the plant's first leaves thrive. The energy and food that we grow, all those delicious other plant parts, that comes thanks to the leaves. For many of our veggie plants, every single leaf, including the very first one, is 100% A-OK to eat. Leaves from the Brassica, Amarantha, and Astera plant families are not just edible, they're incredibly nutritious too. And as I was going through the module I was on today in the Gardenary certification, we actually talked about all of those different families that are most common in our kitchen gardens. And so it's and I'm going to butcher these words, the Apiaceae plant family when you're looking at like fennel and celery, the Asteraceae plant family with lettuces, the Amaranthaceae plant family with beets, Swiss, chard, spinach, the Cucurbitaceae plant family, which is your gourds, your cucumbers, your squash, the Solanaceae plant family, which is your nightshades, your Lamiaceae plant family, which is most of your herbs, the Brassicaceae plant family, radishes, kale, arugula, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, the Fabaceae plant family, which is your legumes, peas, beans, right? The Amaryllidaceae plant family is all of your different types of iliums or onions, garlic, shallots, chives. There's always one other one I want to add in there, and I think they're so yummy, but I can't ever remember the scallions, of course, but there's another kind of specialty like a shallot, and I just can't ever remember them unless I see them at the grocery store. Anyway, onions are yummy, and those are the 9 main plant families. So for many of your veggie plants, not all of them, but from the Brassica, Amarantha, and Astera, there we go. So the Amarantha is your beet, Swiss chard, and spinach. Your Brassica is your broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts, kale, arugula. Then you have the Amarantha, which of course does include amaranth. Tammy and I thought we both had some. I do have some out back. Wonderful plant. Definitely worth growing. I did not know that it had things in it like beets, Swiss chard, spinach. I had no idea, right? Okay, and so most of those, almost all of them, are 100% okay to eat, but we always do our research, right? We're not ever going to, even in a book, it doesn't matter. Books can be wrong, so we want to do our own research, but they're not just edible, they're incredibly nutritious too. And I'm going to back her up on that, but I would never want to encourage anyone to do anything other than research before you make choices that you don't already just know, right? We know we can go to the store, we can buy a tomato, we can eat the tomato, but can we eat the tomato leaves? There is some argument out there, but most people tend to say, no, tomato leaves are not good for you and you don't want to eat them, right? And so, moving forward. In fact, proponents of sprouts and microgreens argue that the highest level of nutrition available is in the youngest of leaves. You'll never get a more vitamin-packed serving of any edible plant than you will from the first true leaves it grows. For that reason, we start our gardening journey here, in this place where you've already been, but perhaps never noticed before. We begin with the thing that is most available to us, most eager to grow, to spread, and to thrive. We begin with the magic of a green leaf that can harness the rays of the sun, absorb the minerals of the soil and the water in the air, and create its own energy to grow forever and feed us along the way. Step 1, sprouts, shoots, and microgreens. Okay, so there's a little introduction and then it goes into step 1. Gotcha. I'd love to garden, but I just don't have the space. I must have said these words 100 times when I was in my 20s. During those years, I lived in a small apartment in China, a row house in Philadelphia, and a townhome in Virginia. Though my living space increased with every move, I never felt like I had a true yard or a spot to put down roots and start growing. I still remember climbing the stairs to my apartment in China and seeing the farmers working the terraced fields behind me, or driving in from an hour-long commute in Philly and passing my field or my friend as she watered her flowers. For a long time, it felt like gardening was for people with picket fences or a farm, and I wasn't one of those people. Now, even as I sit here with a larger yard than I've ever had before, it's ironic that I often find as much, if not more, joy in the sprouts I harvest from the kitchen counter and the greens I bring up from the basement as I do in the harvest baskets I fill from my raised beds. If only my current self could have shown my 20-something self that gardening was much less about space and more about perspective, because I was convinced that I needed a large yard and a dedicated area to truly start gardening. I missed all the opportunities that were right in front of me. Even in my little Chinese apartment, there was room to grow sprouts, microgreens, and a small salad garden. If that space was adequate, then I'm sure you've got enough room right where you are too. You know the saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right? Well, here's my version. Whether you think you have enough space to garden or not, you're underestimating. You can grow more, in other words, right? Perspective matters. If you believe you've got enough space to start growing, then you'll begin where you are and find you have more than you thought. But if you're convinced, as I once was, that what you have isn't enough, then you'll keep finding reasons to wait and miss all the harvest bowls you could already be filling. So, for a moment, I want you to believe that you already have all you need to become a gardener and grow greens year-round. In this first step, you'll learn what I wish I'd known way back when. Sprouts and small greens are step one because they introduce you to the basics of plant growth and help you find success almost immediately and in any space. Singing or playing a scale is technically making music, even if it feels basic. Similarly, growing sprouts and greens is truly gardening, even if you only fill one salad bowl with your harvest. Instead of buying plants, we'll buy seeds. Instead of starting outside, we'll begin inside, on a windowsill or under a simple grow light. And instead of committing to months of waiting for our first harvest, we cut from our garden within days of sowing. We'll begin the way our plants begin, with a tiny seed. Each seed starts a new life cycle when pushed into soil. A sprout is just what it sounds like, the first growth of the plant as the seed pops open before the true leaves appear. From each seed, growth happens simultaneously, both upward and downward. After the sprout stage, the plant progresses to microgreen status. At this point, the plant has grown beyond its first shoot and root and has started to develop a thicker set of roots, its cotyledon, and then, finally, its first true leaves. A microgreen is harvested before the stem grows very long, and it can cut either right after the cotyledon or a few days later when the first set of true leaves appears. Plant families. You can grow many plants for their sprouts or young greens, but these 4 plant families comprise the majority of sprouts and microgreens you'll typically want to grow. The Asteraceae. Commonly known as the aster or daisy family, this includes lettuce varieties like buttercrunch, radicchio, endive, romaine, red lettuces. Any lettuce that you love can be enjoyed in a much smaller form as a microgreen or sprout. Sunflowers are included in this plant family too. Amaranthaceae. Plants in the amaranth family, including spinach, Swiss chard, and beets, can all be enjoyed as microgreens or sprouts. If you're looking for sprouts or greens in a rainbow of colors, especially shades of red, orange, and pink, this family is one to try. Apiaceae. If you love carrots or parsley or cilantro, growing microgreens from this family is a great way to add those flavors to your dishes without growing large plants in the garden. These sprouts contain all the taste of mature plants but grow in a much smaller and contained space. Brassicaceae. The brassica, mustard, and leafy green family provides loads of options for sprouts and microgreens. Arugula, radish, kale, kohlrabi, turnip greens, mustard greens, mizuna, broccoli, and more. These near microscopic seeds are fast to sprout and easy to grow as tiny greens any time of year. Don't fear Latin names. Many gardeners panic or their eyes glaze over when they come across Latin or botanical names. Don't worry, I won't overload you with learning another language, and there's no test at the end of each chapter. These botanical family names are useful because the family members have similar growing habits. Know how to grow one plant, and you'll likely succeed with its cousin. Setup. Space. Growing plants for sprouts and microgreens harvest is your ticket to the tiniest magic show, a spectacular event that takes place under a big top the size of this book. It's a feat of nature that provides as much nutrition in a few tiny leaves as you could harvest from an entire row of plants. Seriously. All that with just a few minutes of setup or preparation. Sprouts and microgreens can be grown in a container as small as a dinner plate. For that reason, we'll speak of space needs in terms of how much you can harvest for one serving. These plants are called micro for a reason. They really are tiny. Sprouts do well in a jar or a sprouting tray that has drainage holes or a special serrated top, small enough to keep the seeds in and large enough to let the water out. Alternatively, you can simply use a bowl and a strainer. You'll need a container that allows you to rinse the seeds and then drain them fully again during the growing process. You'll need a container that allows you to rinse the seeds and then drain them fully again and again during the growing process. For microgreens, I found that the ideal container is at least the size of a baking sheet, so I have enough for one big salad each time I harvest. The best trays are a couple of inches deep, 12 inches wide, and 18 inches long. I recommend a container with a minimum volume of 1/4 to 1/2 cubic foot. To grow sprouts, begin by soaking a few tablespoons of seeds in water overnight or for up to 12 hours. After soaking, rinse the seeds, strain them, and set them aside on a tray or place them in a jar with a perforated lid, laying the jar on its side so the sprouts can fully drain. Leave the soaked seeds in place, no need to place them under light, and rinse again 6 to 12 hours later. You've now officially set up your sprouts and will only need to continue rinsing and spreading out your seeds until the sprouts are ready. More on this in the tending section, page 52. To grow microgreens, wet the seed starting mix well so it is damp to the touch, but not dripping when held in your hand. Spread 1 to 2 inches of the damp mix on the tray with drainage holes. Scatter the contents of a seed packet over the tray. You want the seeds to fully cover the soil, but not overlap. Lightly sprinkle a 1/2 inch of the remaining seed starting mixture over the planted seeds. Set the planting tray on the non-draining tray. Cover the tray with a dome or a tea towel and place it in a cool spot. Check the tray daily to look for signs of growth, noting the soil moisture level and adding water to the non-draining tray if needed. At the first sign of growth, place the sprouting tray 3 or 4 inches below the grow lights and set the lights to shine on the trays for 12 hours a day. Voila! You've officially taken the first step on your garden journey, and you didn't even have to leave the kitchen. Sunlight. Here's some surprising news. Sprouts and microgreens don't need light to begin the growing process. While all plants need sunlight, most seeds germinate in darkness. It's water that wakes them from dormancy. If you're simply growing sprouts, don't worry about a light at all. You can start moist seeds in the ambient light, nothing too bright, of your kitchen, and you'll get loads of sprouts 5 to 6 days after soaking. Microgreens will require light to reach the leafy green stage rather than stay as sprouted seeds. The initial sprouting can happen in a cool, dark place to imitate a seed germinating underground, but once the first green shoots appear, they grow best with consistent bright light that's placed 3 to 4 inches above the tray. You can use a formal grow lamp setup with lights that can be lowered and raised above the plant trays. This method is more complex to set up, but simple to maintain. As the sprouts grow each day, the artificial light is raised so that the bulb never touches the greens, but is kept a few inches away. Microgreens will grow most consistently indoors under a grow light or in a climate-controlled greenhouse outdoors. Microgreens thrive with 12 hours of artificial light, but if exposed to natural sunlight, they may grow with fewer hours. I don't recommend growing microgreens on a windowsill as they will produce longer stems and less robust leaves and will be less productive than those grown under light. Season. After I gardened in the warm climate of Houston, shock doesn't begin to express my feelings about the winters in Chicago. We landed in the Midwest in the middle of a polar vortex, an experience I'd only recommend for Santa Claus and his reindeer. Suffice it to say that my first winter in the Midwest was tough. Yes, I was cold, but more than that, I missed gardening year round and eating the greens that I'd grown all winter in my southern garden. So after we survived the first winter, I knew I needed a way to find some green through the coldest months. The following year, I gathered my supplies, bought seeds before the holidays, and started planting on January 1st. Within weeks, I was cutting microgreens and sprouts nearly every day, even the days when I looked outside and could see nothing but snow. By February, I was eating fresh greens weekly, and the calendar told me the spring solstice wasn't too far away. Winter was still a challenge, but I had found a way to push through the dark and frigid days without hopping on an airplane and flying south. I'm not saying that growing microgreens is the solution to winter doldrums, but I'm not saying it isn't. And speaking of survival, the summers in the deep south aren't exactly a walk in the park, especially when it comes to keeping plants alive in the garden. Microgreens can be used to stretch the salad garden season during summer as well. Most microgreens and sprouts go easily and quickly in typical indoor temperatures between 60 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. If part of your home runs cooler, they may do even better. For me, a little closet in my basement gives me the most success. In our Houston home, my choice would have been the hall storage closet, without an AC vent, that remained at a constant temperature year round. Whether you're surviving a frigid winter or pushing through a scorching summer, mastering step one means you never have to wait for the right season to start gardening. Care we'll start with next week. All right. So, have you guys, any of you thought about growing microgreens or sprouts since we've been talking about it? Benny, you pulled out, or not Benny, excuse me, Kendez, you pulled out your device. Have you started growing sprouts again?
Not quite.
No? Are you going to, or not really? You just were showing us your container.
Yeah, I'm planning on getting back into it to start getting back into my shakes and whatnot. 'Cause
I
that's
definitely know why we didn't do well with our sprouts. We weren't rinsing and washing them every day. And then you have to dry them as well. How do you dry them?
Oh, I never did. Like I took them right out the container and put them in my blender and created my shakes with them.
Okay. So let me just read that part again. Make sure I didn't misread something, right?
Hmm.
And so then we'll have to research like what would be the benefit of doing that, right? To grow sprouts. Begin by soaking a few tablespoons of seeds in water overnight or for up to 12 hours. After soaking, rinse the seeds, strain them, and set them aside on a tray or place them in a jar with a perforated lid, laying the jar on its side so the sprouts can fully drain. Leave the soaked seeds in place. No need to place them under a light and rinse again 6 to 12 hours later. Oh, you don't have to dry it. I misread that. Okay. So, were you rinsing it a lot when you were doing it?
Oh, well, the way the container works is, I mean, essentially it gets rinsed because, after the day it's on top, the second day it's on the bottom and it gets watered again and then drained. And then the third day it gets on the third level and it gets watered again and drained. And then on the fourth day it gets watered again and then drained on the fifth day.
And you just keep putting new ones underneath to start the process again. Is that right?
Mhm.
Nice. That's really neat. Okay. Anyone else? Tammy, you have this huge indoor grow house. Are you going to grow some microgreens or sprouts?
Uh, sure. I've never grown them before, but possibly.
I
Sounds
have
in
not ever tried microgreens, right? But to grow a microgreen, it's just growing a plant, right? But you just stop it. So you have
yeah,
grown them. You've just developed them into full plants. Sprouts are a little different when you don't have them in a growing medium, right?
gotcha. Yeah, I don't really know too much about them. That's probably why. Yeah, I've heard about them, but I just haven't really went down that avenue yet. But I get what
Well,
you're
you've
saying.
got this set up for you, so we're probably going to bug you to try to get you to join in with us, all right?
I'm sure I'm down. Whatever. It's a big tent. I'm down to
Right?
grow whatever.
And how about you guys, Benny and Vanessa?
Well, I think when you were saying those words, I was like, what plant family or what do they have in them? And then you started saying the sprouts and things like that. I was like, oh my gosh, those, I've never even heard of those, them categorized in those groups of plants. The
I have some
names.
of them, not all of them, right? We do shy away from Latin names, right?
Yeah.
Well, most of us anyway. I am included in that group. So, yeah. Well, do you think you might want to try it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds interesting, right?
Yeah,
And
it sounds very interesting.
where you've struggled with your pepper plants and things, do you think it might give you a little bit more feeling of control of what you're doing by starting at this smaller stage, like what we've talked about with her leaves, roots, and fruit system?
Kind of. I don't know. Then I kind of think, well, maybe they just won't grow, but we'll see.
Well, like she's saying, the setup really is the key, right? And with these, there's such a minimal setup. So if you try it with sprouts, you don't even have to have a growing medium. Did you sprout seeds when you were a little kid, right? In elementary school?
Yeah.
That's all you're doing. It's that easy. So you're almost guaranteed success unless you don't set it up. You let it dry out or something, right? Like it's relatively basic. I promise you, if you give it a shot, you'll see the difference and how much easier it is. And it will. It's like thinking that the phone is never going to ring. I promise you it will. I promise
And
you the seeds will grow. They will grow, right?
when do you start those? When are you going to start yours?
I'm going to try to start them this week and I will do a video for them. And I'm going to try to do both sprouts and microgreens.
Oh, oh,
Okay.
okay. Be waiting for the video.
You got it, lady. All right, guys. So jumping into our calendar, I did create a new image. What do you guys think? Is it a little too fairy tale like? This is what
I
Gemini
love
did.
it. I
Do
love
you?
it. I
I
love
like it
it.
as well. There was
I
one
love
that was too much. As much as I liked it, I did like it. I will not hide from that fact, but I just didn't think a gnome and a larger than life flower were really appropriate for what we do here. It was a little too fairy tale, but I'm glad you guys like this a little bit less fairy tale. And did you see back here this globe? It's not like a planet. It's got more like stained glass that's fanciful in it. It's really fun. Neat little image.
Kind of looks like a greenhouse.
Right, exactly. You're right. I think that's what it's a fanciful greenhouse, right? And so it is very pretty and fun. And that will be tomorrow, where we join back in for Plan Your Wild workshop. The first one, I wasn't ever able to find time to get that remade up. So we will have two Plan Your Wild workshops this month, and we'll split it in half. What we've got done for November, I've already got November and December done. And going into next year, January, February, March, April, and May are all completed. So I still have from June through October to work on, but we're good to go and solid, ready to begin the new year. We've got 2 good months that we can work here in this year to see how the format goes, see if we want to change anything up before we start at the beginning of the year. Like she said, in I think something that we may have watched together, but I'm not certain. But you want to be, oh yes, right. We talked about it. You want to start thinking 3 months ahead. So in January, we're thinking about April. In February, we're thinking about May. In March, we're thinking about June. And that's how you are ready as each season rolls around. But we want to make that easy because that sounds like heavy duty stress. No, no, no. Doing it in stages, having lists, having checklists, having this group to support, picking which pieces we want to do. I promise you it's going to make it so much easier, right? And so we just want to start playing with that this month and next month as we're winding down into the colder and colder seasons. And it's so perfect because though when we think about gardening, we think about the spring and the summer and then the fall with the harvest. But in all reality, this leaves, roots, and fruit system is best started at the time that we're at right now with those microgreens and sprouts. Then in January, we're going to have all that experience with the microgreens and sprouts. That's when we want to start thinking about getting our setups ready for our seedlings that we want to start indoors, right? And so we have time, we've practiced, and then before we need it, we're starting to think about it in January. It gives us so much more control over our gardening journey, and it keeps us from feeling frantic and behind and out of season and out of time, right? And so I hope you guys are able to join in tomorrow for our first Plan Your Wild workshop at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Mountain, 8:30 p.m. Central, and 9:30 p.m. Eastern. All right, everybody. Please feel free to unmute your mics and say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
Everybody.
Sleep well.
Oh.
Sleep well, and see you next week.